Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we're going to talk about line twist, and I'm going to provide you with 5 simple tips to limit line twist because there's really no way you can always 100% prevent it. But these are 5 simple things you can do to limit the amount of line twist that you get. Now, before I get into that though, I want to let you know why the topic of line twist is a pet peeve of mine. This is one of those things that generally gets under my skin a little bit anytime I'm talking about fishing, and it has to do with the idea that line twist is bad. Yes, line twist is generally not something that we want to have happen. But what I mean by this is more times than not, when you get line twist, it's because the technique that you're using generally leads to line twist. And if that technique is the best technique for that time, for that place that you're fishing, then you should be fishing that technique, even if it leads to line twist. There are some very, very good techniques out there that end up resulting in pretty bad line twists by the time you're done fishing throughout the day. But because that technique is the best technique for that time of day and that pattern that you're fishing, you sometimes just got to deal with it. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I run into way too many individuals out there that would rather not fish a technique or a bait that will provide you with some line twists throughout the day. They'd rather go with an inferior bait or an inferior technique that's gonna hurt the results of their experience on the water. So to me, if you're gonna catch 2 fish an hour and you're gonna get line twist, that's better than using a bait that's not gonna have line twist and leads to 1 bite an hour. I just really think oftentimes there are too many anglers out there that really will steer away from a certain technique or bait because of the line twist. And what that means is over the course of that day, they may actually be really hurting themselves from a productivity standpoint. So for me, it's kind of a hot topic button. I get a lot of questions, a lot of comments regarding line twist and whether a bait leads to line twist or, how to prevent it. And it's just one of those things where sometimes you got to deal with it. There are a lot of techniques out there. A drop shot is one that generally leads to a pile of line twists, but it's a phenomenal technique. And because of that, you should deal with it at times. So, having said that, having prefaced it, I definitely still am always looking at the small little details that can lead to line twists. And if there's things we can do to prevent it, we should try to prevent it. So, the 5 tips that I've got for you, the first one often goes very overlooked, and that is your knot position on your hook. Your knot should be at the top of your hook eye. If you're placing the knot below the hook eye, so maybe sometimes your knot slides down and gets caught like at the bottom of your eye or your hook, that will tend to lead to your bait coming in off centered, which can lead to rotation in the water, and that then leads to line twist. So, one thing you can do to limit your line twist is to have the knot at the top of the eye. Now, having said that, there are times I would rather get the line twist and have my knot at a different position on the hook eye. So you can move the positioning of the knot to help a bait stand up. You can change the position of a hook set sometimes based on where your knot's at. So there are times I'll actually not have my knot there, but I know that that could lead to my bait potentially twirling through the water, and it leads to a little bit of line twist. So that's one thing you want to pay attention to is where is your knot? And that's not just necessarily on your hook. I mentioned a drop shot earlier. A lot of that line twist will come from the knot that people tie onto their drop shot weight. A lot of drop shot weights have that pinch area, that pinch point swivel, and people will tie directly to that, but that means the knot is going to be off to one of the sides. Well, that gets that weight spinning, which then twists the rest of the line. So you just want to pay attention to your knots. You also want to pay attention to any of your tag line positioning because that can do the same depending on the line that you're using. Along that same thought process is the second thing to pay attention to, and that is your hook positioning in a bait. You want your hook to be centered through your bait so that when it comes through the water column, it is coming through straight. If you off center your hook. So maybe it's tilted a little bit to the side and it doesn't take much. That's just a little bit to the side. That can actually throw the balance of your bait off, which can lead to twisting because your bait will all of a sudden start spinning in the water column. Some people out there like to actually take their hook and skin hook on the side of the bait. They think they get better hookup percentage just like that. Well, I can tell you, as soon as you see that hook off to the side, when that thing's coming at you, it's actually going to act almost as a propeller. The hook is going to want to actually spin your bait. So you want to pay close attention to where your hook is positioned in your bait as well. If it's centered properly, you should not have any spinning. If it's off centered, you could get a ton of spin leading to line twist. So that's definitely something you want to pay attention to as well. Another is a simple one that happens while you know you're getting line twist, and that is to allow your bait to come in at a slower speed. So a lot of baits, I'll use the drop shot again. If you throw it out, you finish your cast, maybe you're halfway back to the boat, you want to make another cast, you crank it in as fast as you can go, and then you make your another cast. Well, when you crank it in at an extreme speed, that will actually lead to that bait, which is already twisting in the water, to twist even faster, which will make your line twist occur at a more rapid speed. If you retrieve that bait in after you're done with that portion of the cast at a slower speed, it will tend to prevent your line from twisting as much because your bait isn't being pushed faster through the water column. So it's actually limiting the number of rotations that bait is doing as it's coming back to you. So you can retrieve your bait at a slower speed to really help limit the amount of line twist. Now, for myself, in a tournament situation, generally doesn't fly. I would rather deal with line twist and be able to make more casts than to retrieve my bait in slower. But if I'm out fun fishing, I will definitely retrieve my bait slower to limit line twist at some point. Now, having said that, if I get my line in and I do see a good amount of line twist, there's two things that I like to do to then remove some of that line twist. First, I'll actually let a decent amount of line out and I'll hold my rod tip up before I make a cast and let my bait actually unspin. If you have a lot of line twist, I'd rather take a little bit of time between a handful of casts and let a lot of that line twist really spin out before I go ahead and make the next cast. If I'm at the point where I've got just too much line twist, I'll actually cut that bait off, pull a lot of line out, and usually get on the trolling motor and hold my line up and allow a lot of that line twist just to come out of my line, retie the bait on, go back to fishing. So you want to recognize that when you are getting line twist, there are some things that you can do to remove some of that line twist. You don't have to just keep fishing until it gets to the point where it's causing you knots. The last thing, and this is something that I think is pretty commonplace with a lot of people, is they'll actually either use a swivel to connect their bait to their line, or they'll put a swivel away from the bait, but up their line a little bit to the point where it's not going through your guides. Maybe it's 18 inches, 24 inches, even up to 36 inches in top of the bait. But including a swivel somewhere throughout the your line portion will drastically reduce a lot of your spinning of the bait and your line twist that's ending up, throughout your line at that point. But a lot of times too, a swivel can be a little bit of a headache and it doesn't solve the issue completely generally, but it is something that you can do to help limit the amount of line twists. For example, if you were to fish, say a inline spinner, which is known to create a lot of line twists, attaching that inline spinner with a swivel, good way to go about it. The swivel pretty much just blends in with the line through spinner already at that point, but you can definitely apply a swivel. So those are 5 simple things that you can do to limit the amount of line twist that you're getting in your line. But just remember, guys, if you're going to take anything away from this video, line twist isn't necessarily bad. It may be the thing that is the result of using the right bait or the right technique for that time and place that you're fishing, which is leading to a more productive day on the water. So in some instances, you're going to have to deal with it, knowing that you're catching more fish and you're getting a little bit of line twist as a result. But don't let line twist dictate your bait choice or your bait selection or the style or place that you're fishing. It's going to be the result of some of the different techniques out there. Anyways, guys, if you've got other tips to help limit the amount of line twist, I'm sure there's some viewers that would like to learn from you as well, so throw that up in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, new video coming out tomorrow.